All right, welcome to another Nonsense Wars production. This is a revision of my not reversing elevator, and I think I'm going to revise it again, but I also want to document these intermediary steps. The original design for this module was really weird and really big for two reasons. I didn't really understand how the lift mechanism worked, and I wanted to have this low loading for the GBC train revision, which I don't know if I'm actually going to build. Having run it a bit and understanding how the mechanism works, I thought about how to compact it, and I eventually settled on this linear layout that still has the low loading. The biggest change besides the layout is that the chain now pulls down on the counterweight rather than up on the elevator. And what this does is it distributes the weight better between the elevator and the counterweight, such that I don't need the weight brick on the counterweight side. The counterweight itself is quite stripped down from before, though it still has places to add or remove weight in order to better balance it with the elevator. The wheels on the inside are small wheels in order to pass the elevator. The clearances are tight because I've tried to compact everything as much as possible. On the elevator side, you'll see these two pins where the rope attaches, and these are just places to wind the rope such that I can adjust the rope length without actually adjusting the rope itself. I've also tried to keep the capacity of the elevator pretty small, such that the module isn't throwing huge batches of balls at the next module. But this requires a little bit of passive funneling in the input. Generally, these passive funnels are not a good idea, but I think the 4 2/3 width, thanks to those system fences, is an okay compromise. Of course, this is something that only more long-term testing will see if it jams, but it seems to be okay for now. Now, as far as drivetrain goes, having the motor under the output ramp is always a convenient placement. I've left an axle here for a shared power fitting, but of course, I can't have it on the other end due to the low loading. The first version of this module had a tensioner in the back for the chain, but this module is actually gravity tensioned, like my chain lifts. What's actually happening is that the weight of the elevator, even though it's moving, pulls on this pulley, which then pulls on the chain. Also, in addition to being a counterweight enthusiast, I am also a crankshaft enthusiast, and that's how the power transmits from the motor over to the chain. I think crankshafts are an underrated power transmission mechanism, and they do a good job transmitting power long distances with minimal losses. So I think the limiting factor to simplifying it and shrinking it more is getting rid of the low loading. If I get rid of that, I can shrink the distance that the elevator needs to go up, and therefore I can shrink the height of this counterweight tower. When that's shorter, I can move it above the input, and that'll take maybe a third of the length off the module. I think that's all I have to say about this revision. Please consider subscribing if you like what we do, and enjoy more footage of this thing running.